Okay, so 4 lectures on Sicily and Malta. Uh, Quick introduction about myself. Born in Istanbul. Many of you know me already, so I'm not going to stay too long on this. Born in Istanbul in 1965. Stayed there until I was age 9, and then my parents moved us to Paris. But I returned to Istanbul every summer as long as I could. And so I am in Paris there. And then I moved to the States when I turned 26. I left Paris for Manhattan, which seemed to be more inviting than Paris for a foreigner. So I was a happy immigrant in Manhattan, almost like everyone else, and speaking with proudly with an accent rather than trying to hide and be like everyone else in Paris. And then while I was in New York, I met Maria, and she and I got married at Mohonk Mountain House, which is what we are seeing in the background here. That was in 1995. And then we were blessed with one child, one son, and that's Robert here. He was born in 1997. And he
98.
98. Okay. Thanks for correcting me, Robert. That's your only correction that I will accept today. The rest you have to listen to me with all my mistakes. Ha ha ha. So yeah, 98. My goodness. We waited that long, 3 years to have you. It didn't come soon enough, I guess. And this kid developed quite a lot of talents left and right. And here he is just pouring his heart out at Mohonk in one of the performances that he was semi-invited in participating. He tends to jump in and usually he pulls it off very well, even though he checks on the lyrics just before he comes on stage. So he can do all that. And he's also an awesome dancer. So this is in 2019. And then he's been with Tori, who's our host today at the Zoom, and here they are also at Mohonk. And the two of them are living in Tucson, Arizona. Tori is going to be my co-host during the Sicily and Malta tour, and Robert is going to accompany her, and he will certainly be very involved in participating and helping out in whatever way he can. So it's going to be wonderful to have these young ones with us on this special trip. Yeah, full disclosure, you kind of saw it perhaps in the background. Since Robert was born and since this picture was taken, Robert grew a mustache, which we are still hesitating to accept, but we kind of joke about it. I kind of remind him that he looks like Groucho Marx, but he probably doesn't know what that is, but doesn't matter. So here is our little boy, and with Maria, and the sign that you see in the background that's almost says close. It's actually our home because I live in this building, and this building pairs as an art gallery. And this is how it looks inside the main gallery room. We are right on Mohonk Road. If you continue this road in the background, you will go to Mohonk. And and I've been doing this since 2012, running a gallery showing local artists exclusively. And it's only until 2018 that one thing led to another and started to curate, I shall say, beside shows, tours in places that I was familiar with, and one of them, maybe the most familiar was the south of France, besides Paris, obviously. And this is my first tour, Art in Provence, and I did that for a tour company called Artful Journeys, based in Cape Cod. And since early this year, only early this year, I created my own company called Art Blazing Tours. The Artful Journeys stopped presenting tours that are focused on visual arts, mostly on classical music. So I was encouraged to create my own company, which I did, and I started actually with Sicily and Malta tour, it was almost like a dry run, a dress rehearsal for what's to come next year for us. And I did it with a very small group of former travelers. So that was back in February. So February 2026, we will then do our tour, and about which this series of lectures is. design. Since then, I did this Northern Soul, and then I just came back recently, like 2, 3 weeks ago, from Istanbul, and next year, besides Sicily and Malta, we'll be presenting Maria and I. She will be my co-host for that, the Provence tour, and then a Spain tour is also planned for fall 2026. Of course, if you're interested in any of these, I do have one room available for Sicily and Malta and for Provence, and Spain is has more availability. Okay, let's talk about Sicily and Malta. Now, why Sicily? Why Malta? Well, the number one reason is very obvious. It's Caravaggio. I got interested. I basically Sicily entered my radar, my map, because Caravaggio spent time there, and he spent about a year there, and he produced several works that are still on view in Sicily, which we will go and see, of course. And Caravaggio is the subject of my final fourth lecture. So Caravaggio certainly reason number one. Now, a little bit more of an obscure reason, I believe it's an obscure reason, but very interesting reason. It's Antonello da Messina. So this is an artist. Ironically, Renaissance is often located as its beginning, Italian Renaissance, I shall say, in Florence, but maybe, and this is certainly up for debate, the artist who had maybe the greatest impact on the Renaissance was not from Florence, was not even from the mainland, was from Sicily, out of all places, which is so ironic because practically there is no other artist that made any kind of contribution to art history besides him. So look at this picture. I mean, we'll talk about him perhaps at the end of the third lecture and definitely before Caravaggio starts as a prelude. Look at how realistic it is. Look at the brushwork, how smooth it is. I mean, this is an incredible skill that this man had that he brought from the Northern Renaissance artist, and then he introduced it to the Italian artist. And so his impact is huge. And there are several works that are on view also in in Sicily, and we are going to see those and we're going to admire those. And I hope we're going to get to know Antonello and like him very much. This is somebody kind of dear to me. Um, and then the more I learned about Sicily through all these artists, the more it became more and more fascinating. As you know, like I said, I'm from Istanbul, and Istanbul was once Constantinople, and Constantinople is full of Byzantine art and Byzantine mosaics. And then I find out, pretty quickly that Sicily is full of, Byzantine mosaics. Like, what? How is that possible? Well, we're going to find out about that in our second lecture. And those mosaics that we see them probably are rivaling Constantinople, Istanbul, Ravenna, Venice. These are just incredibly well preserved mosaics, made by Byzantines who were obviously imported from Constantinople to make them. Um, as you get to know more about Sicily, you definitely then find out that there was an incredible heritage left by the Greeks, a little bit by the Romans, but mainly by the ancient Greeks. Greece, as you know, was full of city-states, and those city-states, they started to put colonies here and there, especially around Sicily and along the Italian coast, and there was many of them were all over Sicily. And they, of course, built amazing temples. And we are talking here 400, almost 500 BC. I mean, this goes really, really back, even built before the Parthenon. So it's absolutely incredible. And they are preserved so well, so impressively that they rival what you can find in Greece itself. Now, I'm saying this full disclosure, I've never been to Greece. I will go there. I'm still building all the knowledge that I need to fully appreciate going there. I'm going to be there very soon. But this is what I hear, And it's known that these temples in Sicily just rivaled those found in Greece itself. So Malta, well, Malta again, why Malta? Caravaggio, again, he spent time there, and he spent time there in a very tumultuous way. There is an escape that happened in one of these forts that we see here, some miraculous escape. How did he manage to get out of there? I don't think people know the details how that happened. But Caravaggio also has his masterpiece, absolute ultimate masterpiece, is found in Malta, which we will go and see in the cathedral in Valletta, in the capital of Sicily. I mean, of Malta. And of course, the more you find out about Malta, you also immediately are going to discover that there are some Neolithic sites. And I know I'm very little about that part of things. Robert has scolded me once because I didn't have, much of an interest or much of knowledge about Egyptian art, which I am going to build gradually. As you know, whatever I'm telling you, everything that I know is really self-taught. I didn't go to school, so my knowledge is all acquired completely in an unconventional way. So things are done, by just passion, by what attracts me, and then one thing leads to another, and connections are made, and that's how big at the end of maybe of my life, there will be a more complete knowledge of art history. But this is something so interesting. I mean, we're talking 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 BC. And some of these sites were actually considered to be the oldest, where you had some freestanding temples that were ever been built by any humans in the whole planet. I mean, can you believe that? And it's in Malta. So, well, of course, that distinction got kind of usurped, taken away by another site in Turkey, in Istanbul, which some of our travelers went to see in Göbekli Tepe. And that one just blows this one out of water, because we're talking 10 to 12,000 BC in Göbekli Tepe, where you have standing temples. Standing temples. This is pre Neolithic revolution. So we are talking really, really far behind, before even there was agriculture and there was sedentary life. So it's still being discovered, it's still being debated. But anyway, these temples in Malta, they date from about 6,000 BC. And of course, Roman, I mean, of course, Roman vestiges, but views, that's another thing. But, we are not after going to the beaches. We're not after those kind of enjoyment that Sicily certainly offers, but we're going to have some amazing vistas. And of course, we're going to see from a distance the Mount Etna, sometimes grumbles, sometimes puts out some ashes and some smokes, and just reminds everyone that she's alive. Well, there are some actually some legends, some mythological scenes that's going and saying that there may be some titans that are just resting under the Etna, and then every time they kind of roll in their, like they say, in their tomb, they create this kind of disturbances. So I don't know if that's the truth, but that's kind of a lovely story to justify why we keep getting Etna back in the news every 6 months or so. Okay, so that's those are my reasons as to why we should go to Sicily, should go to Malta. I hope that at the end of this series of lecture, you'll be just as convinced as I am, and certainly my travelers after visiting, you will be very convinced, and you will talk about this and remember these days. Okay, so let's start with this Greco-Roman heritage. Again, before that, I have to show you this thing. I did this myself. This took me quite a while, but I just had to figure this out, because Sicily has this known reputation of being the world's most conquered island. The world's most conquered island, by the way, is the largest island in the Mediterranean. So it's the world's most conquered island. So all of these lines that you see, these are all the different powers, rulers that came and then established themselves and conquered and colonized Sicily. So, of course, the period that we are going to be focusing on is happening right here with the ancient Greeks. Look at the years, and then, of course, the Greeks will be supplanted by the Romans, and then so they're going to come after. So these are the remains from their time that we're going to talk about today. Before that, the Phoenicians had been there, and the Phoenicians then gave way to the Carthaginians, and the Carthage was just across, maybe about 100 miles, maybe 50, yeah, about 90 miles south in today Tunis, in Tunisia. So that's where they were based. So it was very easy for them to come and colonize. So those are the people. And then even like from the very beginning, the indigenous are called the Sicanians. So the Sicily name is actually derived from these early peoples that were over there. Somehow they were there. It was also very interesting because these Elymians were also the earliest people that are found in Sicily. Believe it or not, there is talk that they may have been coming from Anatolia, from Turkey, from Troy. So that's why I added this. So they may be coming from mainland inland or from Troy. So like, hey, that's kind of fun for me because I'm from Turkey. And then all of these other, you know, barbarians, the Byzantines are going to occupy for almost 400 years, 350 years. Of course, the Arabs. So we're going to see about all of this in our second lecture. So I'm not staying here. I'll go over these in our next lecture. So we talked about ancient Greece, and so this is kind of the evolution of classical style. Um, I mean, all of these things, again, I put it together for me to kind of visualize and understand. So here we go, Robert. The Egyptians are right there at the very early stages as it started. And look at the way they are walking toward us in a very stiff way and looking straight at us with their very rigid limbs like this. Often the left foot left the leg coming forward oddly. There is an explanation. There is a reason for that, but always the left foot coming forward. So then the Greeks are going to pick up on this aesthetic of this style, and they're going to have their own version of these statues, of these kuros, of these athletes that are coming forward toward you like this, very stiff, very rigid, but very muscular, very beautifully built bodies. And again, left foot forward, walking toward us, very stiff. And then comes this classical era. So this is the period that's actually when the Greeks are occupying Sicily. This is I think the most precious, the most important period of all of those classical periods because the influence that this has had for the rest of Western civilization when it comes to art is immense. And it's only lasts about 150 years, where they developed a very natural way of depicting the human body. Like you can see here, this is called the contrapposto, this very relaxed way of standing versus this very stiff and rigid way. So just basically the weight is on one leg, the other one is kind of elegant and svelte like this. And then beautifully built bodies, in perfection. There is not much superfluous things going on. It's kind of simple in that sense. After all, we're coming from here. So this is this classical era that's happening around 480 to 323, death of Alexander the Great. And some of the greatest artists are going to come from this time. And this is the period where Sicily is building all of these temples that we're going to see in a minute. And then after that, we're going to have this Hellenistic period after the death of Alexander the Great, where things are going to become very complicated. Look at how the complexity of this figure, and then look at all the real estate that this person is taking in its space. Whereas here, it's kind of contained just in this area. Here, we are going all around it. Plus, we are adding a bunch of other figures. So it's hugely complex. And then after that, when Greece is integrated into the Roman Empire, Then you're going to have this early Roman, again, picking up on a lot of the Greek achievements with a ton of details, and also details to the point of showing warts and showing a lot of defects on the face. I mean, pushing the realism to almost losing the aesthetic quality of it in some ways. It's more important to look so real than really to look idealized or pretty. But then after that, with the advent of Christianity, and I don't know, with all of these, belief structure, then we're gonna actually develop a very idealized faces that are going to now completely shy away from the realism of early Roman. So late Roman, with the advent of Christianity, we're going to have these big eyes and idealized faces. So this is kind of the evolution of classical. I just wanted to put this, it's never too harmful to be reminded about all this, especially in light of the fact that this is the period that's going to be interested us the most. So Sicily has a lot of ancient remains that are of more or less importance. Some of them are just a few stones that have unturned. Others are completely very well preserved temples. So look at it's all over the island. And then the ones that we are going to visit, and especially today we're going to talk about, is Agrigento, the temples there. In Syracuse, there is one temple there, and then there is a theater, a Roman theater, probably most likely, or actually started by the Greeks, right in Taormina. So these are the three things that we're going to talk about today. So let's start with Syracuse. Now, look at that. This is 550 BC. And then I was telling you that that's basically falling in the archaic Greek period. 550 BC is not even classical period. That's just so old. And that's a temple of Apollo that we're going to find in Syracuse. Okay, in Syracuse. So this is like almost 120 years before the Parthenon, in Athens. Parthenon is around 447 BC. So that's in Syracuse. So we're going to uh, talk a lot about architectural terms. So I just wanted to remind you a little bit of what we are looking at. It's very regimented, very ordered, and it follows a very consistent designs. I mean, I didn't definitely study architecture, but it's good to know, trying to point out to this. So one thing that's going to be very apparent as much as possible, this is this part of it, this upper part, which is called the entablature. Of course, I get always confused with the French, so I'm sure that you will pronounce this so much better than I do. So this part actually comprises these three parts. You're going to have the architrave, which is what goes right over the capitals, and you're going to have the frieze. The frieze is something that we are more familiar with because decorations are often done along on the frieze. This is where it's going to happen. The cornice is right here, which is then going to lead to this triangular part, which is the pediment. Which is we're going to have. So this is actually the earliest of the orders. So this is the Doric order. You're going to have the two other orders coming up. We'll talk about those a little bit later. So we've got all of these parts on the very top. Then we have a column, and then the column will have this capital, and then the capital during the Doric order is extremely simple, so it's very easy to recognize. The fluting are those grooves that you find on the shaft. So that's what we're going to have there. So the capital, and then you're going to have a base. So the column is basically composed of the capital, of a shaft, and then the base. Again, three parts here. And then here we have a little bit more complicated. Maybe we don't need to worry about all this, but below the base, you're going to have often some steps here. The stylobate is the top part of it, and then the stereo based stereo, like, two, so that those the two lower steps that are on the bottom, and then the whole thing is called Crepidoma. Okay, so this is really your Doric. Ooh, no, okay. Okay, so this is, hmm, I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let's see. So this is really hard. On the stylobate, they figured out that there was some inscription here. You see some Greek inscription here. And it's actually, this is on the Temple of Apollo. This is how they actually even found the name of the architect. His name was Cleomenes, the architect, which was really amazing. So the mm, structure look like this. I'm going to try to get there. Actually, you know what? I do have a picture right there. So this is how it looks. It's quite incredible. This is like in the middle of the city. So when we go there, we will be standing somewhere here, 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 and then look at this. This is a very, very interesting building because look at these columns. They are made of one stone. It's kind of a monolithic column. It's not drums. The drums are going to be introduced later on. Here they have brought an entire piece of stone here, and then after that they put these grooves, and then they created these columns. They are kind of stocky, not as slender and elegant like you will find later on. And as you can also see that the ceiling is going to be the kind of low standing. So this is 550 BC. It is almost considered to be a prototype of the temples that are going to come after. This is really an early where the architects here, which actually his name has been inscribed, just showing how important he was, that he achieved to come up with a temple like this. They are going to actually, they don't know exactly how far to set these columns from each other so that this entablature can actually stand the weight of itself. So some of them are actually, it's actually way too close. They probably didn't have the calculation. They were still doing trial and error. They kind of overkilled the putting of those columns too close to each other. Anyway, so, and then they will have a whole room inside here, and that room will be having the deity. In the case here is an Apollo, so you will have a statue of Apollo right there, and this will be enclosed oddly. In other words, the worshippers, they don't have access to it, and it will be only accessible by the priest. Okay, so that will be there. And right outside, you will have an altar where the worshippers will come and will drop little votives, little statues, or there will be some sacrifices that are made. And the entrance is on the east side of the building. Okay, not the west. For churches, it's going to be the west. So as you can imagine, when these kind of temples are then appropriated by churches, they have to change the orientation of the entrance completely around. And sometimes it's kind of difficult, it's not really built that way. But for example, this particular temple was turned by the Byzantines into a church. And for example, you've got this arched window right there, which was carved much later. So that it was basically used, and it's always very, very good when a temple is then converted into a church because it preserves it, even though they will bring alterations, but at least it's better than just letting it go in ruins. So it's always good that it has a much longer life, even by different worshippers. So these columns, as you can see here, they are way too close to each other. They didn't need to have them this close, and they are very bulky and stocky. So this is a very, very early version of a temple, and it's very precious, it's very rare, and it's in Syracuse, and it's in it's in Sicily. These pieces must have been extremely heavy to manipulate, and they obviously managed to do that. So then we go to Agrigento. So Agrigento, first we will visit the archaeological museum. So that was we were in Syracuse, so Agrigento. I'm not doing this in the order that we're going to visit. We're going to visit Agrigento first, actually, coming from Palermo. So we go to this museum. Let me see if I can figure this out, but I'm not very good with the with maps, so I'm not gonna worry too much about it. But Agrigento is right here when it comes, and uh, and the museum is somewhere. So this is where the Valley of the Temples are, and the archaeological museum is right here. Okay, so this is where we are going to go, Agrigento. Okay, we will be coming from Syracuse. So we just came now from Syracuse, but we'll be coming from Palermo. Okay, so what we are going to see there is a little bit of a preparation to the temples that we're going to visit later. So a lot of the artifacts and whatever statues that they could find in the excavations of those temples had been preserved in this archaeological museum. And one thing that's absolutely fascinating about them is this statue. I mean, you're looking at this statue, it's kind of funny how they did it. They have all this writing that next to it, and the picture doesn't really show it on the first look. But when you see what is here, then you understand the scale of what you're looking at. This is actually a piano, a grand piano. So now you kind of take it in the monumental size of this statue. What is this statue? It's absolutely colossal. Well, it was part of the uh, structure that supported the temple. They acted almost like columns, okay? So here it is. So here we have a little better idea of the size of it. So this statue is one among very many others. I forgot the names of it, but each bay here actually has one statue and also on the other side. So they are basically like Atlas. They are kind of carrying the weight above their head. In French, they call them Atlantes. It comes from Atlas again. And then the female versions of these are called caryatids. So in English, probably pronounced differently. But caryatids is the female version of it. So basically, a figure whose purpose is to carry a portion of the structure. And these are absolutely colossal. They are huge. So here they are. And as you can see, they are not even covering the whole height, but only a portion of it. So this kind of gives you an idea as to how monumental uh, this building was. This was the Temple of Zeus, which was in the valley of the temple that we are going to visit. So here I'm clearly showing you how they got this idea of using this kind of figures to carry portions of the architecture. It comes from Atlas. And then the female version that I mentioned, the most famous ones are the caryatids, which is in the Acropolis in Athens, and Erechtheion is the building that's very, very famous. So I'm sure that you have seen these reproductions of the pictures of these figures, female figures. But this is so much earlier. This is still dating 400, very elegant, and you can see the classical style developed here with the contrapposto pose, where you've got one of the legs that are kind of relaxed, the other one is carrying the weight. So that's your indication. Here you have none of that. This is extremely rigid, extremely straight, carrying the weight of the building. And then when you go to to Aix-en-Provence, for example, where you have a lot of Baroque buildings, you will find figures, male figures carrying, for example, a balcony here. And those are called Atlantes. So I mentioned all this already. And this is the earliest version of this kind of features, architectural features that we will find later on. So every single face of these Telemons was different, was carved with different, slightly different features. So here it is. Another masterpiece or something that very valuable in this museum is this Agrigento FEB. This is an Agrigento youth, also known. So this is actually a good time, 480. It's just at the cusp of the classical era. So this is the Kuros, which are those athletes that are being celebrated with this kind of statues, beautiful body, amazing curves, actually, especially in his back. I don't have a picture to show you that. But this is actually just preceding the classical era because as you can see, you don't have that contrapposto position or pose, it's still quite rigid. Now, there is something that has puzzled me about this particular cross. So let me just bring back this picture. You remember, as I told you, that the left foot is actually forward? Well, in this case, it appears that it's actually the the right foot that seems to be forward. So look at that. So this is the right foot. And then this is really strange. So I'm not quite sure why there is this. So when we go there, maybe we can find somebody. Oh, actually, I believe we're gonna have a guide with us to take us to this museum. But anyway, even if we can find someone, and hopefully we can ask them. Last time I was there, we were so busy we couldn't really think about that. So it's really a beautifully sculpted piece, and this is the back that I was telling you. It's just incredibly, actually quite sensual. If you look at it, it's really beautifully carved body here. Of course, this what we are so used to seeing these statues being completely white. They were never quite white. They were quite painted actually, and there is just only traces sometimes of the uh, pigments that they used. So here is, for example, one that probably has been recreated. So this is a head of cross 480, same year as when the Agrigento Kuros was created, and she must have been looking just like this. The other things that we're going to enjoy seeing there, they have a wonderful collection of craters. So this is really fun. I mean, again, I've gone through rooms full of these artifacts, objects in museums for many years, and I don't know, they didn't do too much to me. But over time, you start to learn a few things about them, and they start to mean a little bit more about them. So you start to connect, and then you start to look for elements that you learn. So now, for example, one thing to pay attention: are the figures in black or are the figures in clay color? Well, if the figures are in black, that means that it's called the black figure pottery. So black figure. And then if they are clay color, they are called red figure. All right, crater is actually the object here. So black figure, it can be any other type of pottery. If it's black figure, it's going to be older. That's kind of neat. So when you look for black figure, then in museums, then try to pay attention and then make sure that you got it right. Yeah, it is much older. Look at, we have to go to 700 to 500 BC. I mean, that's pretty old. Whereas the red figure, which then, supplanted, took over as a style, this kind of went out of fashion. But also the other thing that was interesting with red figure is that it came closer to the skin color. So it made the figure more natural than here. So the red figure completely took over, and then they totally dropped then making things the black figure. But also the red figure required better technology, bigger handling of firing and whatnot, and the glazes. So it was more difficult. So there needed to be some progress made in that technology to get to that. That's why it arrived later. So red figure, black figure. All right, so we can check things out. So here is a black figure. It's basically done in a very different techniques. You can be so much more detailed in your drawings and your picture making when you're using the red figure. Look at that. So all these details are here. It's a little bit hard to create, so these look a little bit more primitive when it's black figure, and you can have all of these designs as well. So uh, anyway, so it's always a little bit difficult, of course, to fully appreciate these objects because they are behind a window, behind the case, and you cannot sometimes go all the way around to appreciate what's going on. So craters, these many of them have traveled time and made it to our possession in more or less perfect shape. Some of them, of course, like this one, may have been cracked and then got put back together, like this one here. But many of them have arrived to us in perfect shape. So what are craters? Well, craters were very common. They were vessels that were used to mix wine during events that the Greeks called. Shoot, I have a blank now. I just remembered it, but I didn't. It will come back. Uh, anyway, so it will come back. So there's it's actually a term that today we wouldn't use for anything like this, like drinking symposium. I think it's symposium. I think it's called symposium. So, so these were events where they will come together and they will just drink wine and probably just have a very upscale social occasion, and the wine was mixed in these vessels. Of course, the wine at that time was not as perfectly made as it is today. So it will be mixed with spices, it will be mixed with honey, the water will be added to it. So all of this little recipe was being followed, and all of that was done in these containers. All right. So once all of these spices and all of this wine, honey and water was added, then it was time for them to serve. And there's a whole other set of objects that we will see a little bit later as to how this is served. But here is something else that actually, when we go to museums, we can look for. Now, we know what the crater is. This is kind of a large object, large vessel, large containers for this purpose that I call symposium. We'll have to double check that, but I think my memory is correct on this one. And it was basically wine drinking parties, okay, by the Greeks. There are four types of them, and it's kind of fun to look for them and recognize them. Okay, you've got the column style, which is like has its handles kind of rising up like this, like on a shoulder, and it's kind of flat like that, and the lip is often projecting like this. Okay, so these are mostly from Corinth, that it's actually started over there in Corinth, in one of the city-states in Greece, and they started around 7th century BC. So this is the column style. All right, we can recognize these handles like this all the way to the top with the lip that's extending. Okay, so you've got the bell shape. You can see now the differences. While the handles are a little bit above the belly, that's the belly. Okay, and then higher part of the vessel. All right, so this is quite easy to recognize. These two are quite easy to recognize. So this is the calyx style, and so the name comes from a flower. The handles are on the bottom. All right, so that's another it looks like actually one of those cups that you give to winning party or team. And then a more elaborate, more complicated version will be the volute style. So you've got four style, and this is a little bit like an kind of an egg shape, and then you have some scroll shape handles right there that's curling right up there. These came a little bit later than these. So four styles. So when we go to museums, if we can just maybe put this down and try to find this, so it will kind of makes it fun in one of those rooms that perhaps we will pass by and not pay too much attention, but it's kind of fun to to look at them. So here is another crater. Um, so what am I showing you? I'm showing you something that's neither red figure, neither black figure. This is completely white. Well, actually, we happen to have a Calic style crater in this museum in this third very precious, very rare style that only a handful of masters from the ancient Greek times were able to do. And actually, this one has been attributed to an artist whose work was actually masterpiece is in Boston. Um, and it just happens that one of his works is also in Agrigento in this museum. So it's pretty big deal. So white ground technique, and we are seeing here Perseus, who is going to save Andromeda. We're not It's kind of got damaged a little bit. We're not really seeing her face very well, but Perseus is going to come and save her from a monster, a sea monster, who's about to kill her because she's being sacrificed. So he's taking his time. He's like, la la la. Maybe I'll come and intervene at some point. She's not dead yet. It's kind of weird, but that's what's happening. Okay, so you've got see, here is another one, the Boston Fiale painter. So it's the same artist that we saw earlier that just uses this white coloring for the faces, for the figures. That's kind of a big deal. Um, so from the crater, you're going to have all of these other objects. So again, in a museum, in all those windows, you're going to see all of that. So if you want to kind of put some meaning to all this, well, there is a meaning, and there is because there is a purpose to all of these objects. So for example, once the wine is produced here, then they're going to use this tool, this ladle, I don't know how to say this, but some sort of a big scooping object, and kiotos, that's how you pronounce this, kiotos, and then you will use that to come and scoop the wine, and then you're gonna then pour it in this pitcher. Kind of weird, but that's how you have to get it from this to this so that from this you can serve it in glasses. But this object is incredibly hard to find. It's very rare. And actually, this is another black figure, so it's quite old. I mean, I had to go, for a good 20 minutes all over the Metropolitan Museum to find one. And I asked so many guards, so many people, they sent me all over the place, and nobody could find one except one was found, and I was very happy about that. So you should have seen me like so excited in one of those rooms where there's maybe not that much excitement, but it's like it's kind of fun. So anyway, so there is one at the Metropolitan Museum. If you ever go there, just look for it. Okay, so from then you have two types of pitchers, this oinoke and then olpe. Of course, my pronunciation of Greek is pretty bad. And then from then you're gonna have several kinds of cups. So this is very interesting. So you're gonna find cups that are kind of flat and shallow like this, and when they are that way, they are used for the wine that's on the surface, because that's the purest wine, because all the impurities and all the little spices and all that, they have fallen in the bottom. So whatever is on top is the most desirable part of the wine, and it goes in this type of cup. So they will use this cup for the most purest part of the wine. But then as they start to reach the bottom, that you're going to have more sediments and impurities coming up, and then you need another type of cup where again those things come to the bottom, and you don't get to drink those spices and all that. So this is why you have then a more conventional looking drinking cups that all have their particular names. Okay, so There we go. All of these things is during the symposium, during these wine drinking parties that the Greeks had. It's just a whole ceremony practically. So I have a picture. So this is the one that I found at the Metropolitan Museum. I forgot that I had the picture. It's actually a black figure. So look for this if you go to the Metropolitan Museum. Another object that was quite interesting, and if I were a designer in, I don't know, kitchen apparels or objects, I will definitely be inspired by that. So this is how they will serve the fish, and then they will put either salt or some spices or some maybe I don't know hot sauce. I imagine. No, it's not the case. But anyway, they will put something like this to complement the fish. And so these are platters that are being used to serve during those parties, and they're lovely. And then you've got a like an army of votive statues that have been found, of course, because all these temples have all these altars, and all these altars had a ton of those little statues that are being offered by the worshippers who are asking for protection, for healing, or they're seeking the granting of a wish, and they are done very cheaply in terracotta. So when you will come, you will walk to the temples. You will find merchants who will be selling all of these things, and then depending on what you're trying to fix in your life, you will choose the appropriate votive statues. So this is like little figurines that are dating from 550, 450. Look at how old this is. So definitely even before classical era. So, and then you've got these figures. So this is very interesting to me because immediately when I saw this, I remember the statue that I had seen in Turkey, and I'm like, how is this here? And the statue in question is this Artemis of Ephesus. And Artemis of Ephesus also has all of these things that, in the beginning, my early in the ignorant stage, I was like, these are all breasts. What kind of creature is this? Well, it turns out that it was actually more like eggs. And then it had a lot to do with fertility. So I am sure, and I haven't studied this, or I haven't gone to school to ask a professor if there was a direct connection between these two, because I mean, why? Because this particular Artemis really is proper to just Ephesus and this area. Ephesus is in Anatolia, is in Turkey. So what are we doing with Sicily? Somehow it traveled, somehow, because it's the same figure, and you have all of these eggs again, and probably these figurines were chosen by women who were trying to expecting or wanting to expect a child, and they were just praying using these votives and putting it on the altar before they, just as they came to the temple. And then you have like very specific object votives here. And here, for example, something that looks like a football. Maybe the guy has a foot problem that's hurting, or he's got a finger issue, and then so he's going to give us a little, wish with the object that reflects the parts of his body that's hurting, that needs fixing. So anyway, so these are all kinds of interesting things. So this is actually quite interesting also. And so look at this. This is another black figure, 620, 600. This is really going back. And then you're seeing actually three legs that seems to be running just like that. Really amazingly well designed. So because today's map of Sicily is this, the Trinacria, or Trinacria. So this is the map of Sicily, and you do have again probably a female figure. Looks like is actually the Medusa, which has three legs that seems to be kind of running like that, and it's very interesting that at 620 BC, already this image was in Sicily somehow. And then after that, we have to wait 300 years later, then it reappears on the back of a coin Okay, around this time. So and then somehow from this to this, we're gonna find ourselves giving this design in the middle of the Sicilian flag. Quite interesting. So you've got this winged kind of head of a woman. It's the Medusa, the Gorgon. And then you have those kind of a wheat ears, I guess you call wheat ears. Well, because Sicily was extremely rich with agriculture, so this is representing that. Those are the wings that I just showed you, and these are the snakes of the Medusa, and then you've got these legs that kind of goes back to this. Kind of interesting how it worked, how it traveled. But anyway, the very original design is in this museum, as far as I know, and then somehow morphed into the flag of Sicily today. And actually, there is another explanation as why we have three legs. It's because Sicily itself looks like a triangle. So all of these things are working just fine. And then when you go over there to Sicily in stores, you're going to find an amazing array of versions of this trinacria created by all kinds of artists that have poured their creativity in these. So this is, of course, very sought after by tourists as magnets um, for refrigerators, etc., etc. But the design has been picked up by many other cultures. It's actually the flag of the Isle of Man has the very design, of course, Sicily. But even the Nazis have used some of those designs, and some of those designs are actually forbidden to be used in Germany. So, okay, so let's go to the Valley of Temples. This was just a little appetizer before we went there. Okay, so Valley of the Temples. Actually, I was almost there. So this is the valley. But actually, the term is not really doesn't really work well because it's not a valley actually. These all these temples are on the crest, on the top of of a small hill, and it's done purposely so that when you are coming from the sea, like you will see all of these temples as you approach, and you will be incredibly impressed. Those seafarers who are just approaching Sicily from the south, they will see this from a distance, and they will be very impressed by this community. So this is what we're going to walk. We will start from here. This is the Temple of Juno, and then we will walk here, and then we will be seeing several temples that are more or less well preserved, and one of them so well preserved is actually second best preserved Greek temple in the world. So this is how the valley looks, but like I said, the temples are on the top of the crest right there. And then here they are: Temple of Juno, Concordia, Hercules, Temple of Zeus, and this is the temple where we had seen those huge Telamon statues that were holding half of that huge building. So that's where it is. And then there is another completely in ruin, the Temple of Castor and Pollux. So these are all these temples that are found in the valley of the temples. The valley is basically where we are walking, but temples themselves are more elevated. And then we can start with the Temple of Juno. So I keep talking about altars, altars, altars. So here is the altar, and this is the temple. The altar is where you're going to have all of these votives and all of these little statues and figurines that I showed earlier that are going to be placed here by the worshippers needing to make a wish. And then This is the famous base that I told you with those three steps. And then you've got the temple itself. And then inside here, this is the cella, the inner room, where you're going to have the statue of the deity that this temple is celebrating. And then on the very back, you will have another room, and that's basically a treasury room. The most precious items are stored here. So this is your typical architectural design of a temple, and all of them are following this design. So the stone that you see here is actually sandstone, which is what can be found here in Sicily. You don't have marble, and they know that's something that's not looking as good as where they came from, probably, which is in mainland Greece. So they are basically going to cover this with white plaster of sorts all over to make it look like it's white and will mimic the effect of marble. Of course, over time, this covering has fallen off, and only portion of it, luckily, has been preserved. So now I can pointing that out to you, but you have to imagine that all this at the original state looked completely white. Of course, at this point, the proportions are becoming a little bit more elongated. It's nothing like the Apollo's temples that I showed you in Syracuse, which was very stocky and elementary and primitive looking. Now it's much more svelte, but same order. Okay, and then made out of drums. The column, the shaft is made out of drums instead of being a monolithic, just made out of one single stone. All of these things have been, of course, improved over time by the time they built this. And the fluting is going to happen after they assemble the shaft, and that's when they're going to add the grooves to the design. It's interesting, of course, all of these things were more or less had collapsed, and then this was all put back together as best as possible. It's like a puzzle, and they have put an architrave here, but they also added right here on top of the architrave the frieze. Right here, the cornice is gone. We don't have any trace of that, and definitely the pediment here is nowhere to be seen. So this is your typical temple that we're going to see. There are also just around the temple. This is where the altar is. You have amazing views, and it's oriented toward the east. Okay, and the sun, when it rises, just sends its rays hitting, passing through the altar, and then entering the temple, probably between the columns. It's because you're going to have six of them, so 3 and 3. It's going to enter and I don't know, probably hitting the statue, maybe gilded, right in the back there, maybe bronze, probably right there. It's just getting the sun. So this is your typical orientation of a Greek temple. Or even classical temple, Roman as well. Of course, during Christianity, we're going to have to switch things around and try to figure out a way to come from the back. That's going to be quite a challenge, I'm sure. So that's the Temple of Juno, 460. And then the next one is the very temple that's really extremely well preserved, and we are walking toward that. And these huge, thick walls were the walls of the city, the protective walls of the city. And during Christian times, they carved inside those walls and used them as necropolis, as burial places. And over time, the the niche that they had built here in which they had buried their dead somehow got pierced through, and then it became a window like that, but originally during Christian time, when they were using this as a burial place, this was closed. But now somehow they're all open and they look quite stunning because you have this very interesting formation through which you see uh, the sea and the Mediterranean Sea in the distance. So here is the Temple of Concordia. I mean, Concordia, who's Concordia? There is no such God, but they find some writings nearby mentioning that something about that the temple was there to gather for the communion of the people, the concord of the people, and so the name kind of stuck, and that's how it is known. But there are other theories as to what deity may have been worshipped in here. So you've got 6 columns here, another hexa style, hexa 6. And then when you have 6 column on one side, it's always follow the same proportion. You're going to have 6 times 2 plus 1 on the sides. So you're going to have 13 columns, 6 times to 12 plus 1. So if you had 8, you'll have 8 times 2, 16 plus 1, 17 columns on the side. This is the proportions that the Greeks are using over and over again. And this, again, is extremely well preserved. The pediment has been preserved. The frieze is here. So it's in absolutely perfect shape. Now, okay, so this is something also incredible that the Greeks, I mean, perfection or pursuit of perfection or sophistication, I don't know. So as you can see, it appears perfectly straight, right? Well, actually, it is built with a slight arching going on here because they figured out that the optical illusion is such that if they had built it just straight, it will look like that. So again, I repeat, it looks straight like this because there is a very slight arching going on here, almost imperceptible, but enough that to our eyes, this is going to look, the base going to look up. I mean, the whole thing is going to look straight instead of looking like that. Okay, so that's quite amazing. So here is again other, vocabulary for our architecture, so that when we go there, we can point out to all this. That's kind of fun. The triglyphs, and metopes are also typical of this order. And then the metopes, this area, usually are filled with decorations on the frieze. Okay. Well, in this case, those are not existent. I don't know if they ever had. Um, but that's usually where a lot of bas relief will be there, alternating with these triglyphs, these 3 uh, small grooves that you see separating each area. The other temple that is believed to be better preserved than this one, so number 1, is actually the temple of Hephaestus. This is Zeus's son, one of his many children. So Temple of Hephaestus, which is in Athens. So this is what we are competing with. And then you've got this amazing statue right in front. Of course, it looks like it belongs to the same era, but it's not. It's actually made by an artist named Igor Mitoray. Mitoray is a Polish sculptor. He died about 10 years ago, but he's really very famous, especially in association with these classical sites. There is also his works in Pompeii. This one shows us Icarus, fallen Icarus. Well, it turns out that Icarus's father. Um, Icarus's father, Daedalus. Daedalus, the Icarus was an amazing engineer. Had to run away from the Minotaur's labyrinth, and then figured out a way to just build some wings for himself and for his son, so that they can just lift off the labyrinth, because they couldn't find an exit to it, even though Daedalus had designed the labyrinth himself, but he had made it so complicated that he couldn't find an exit himself. So instead, he just used the feathers that had fallen from all the birds. And of course, this is all mythology. So he builds this thing, and they fly, and he tells, you guys know the story of Icarus, I'm sure, that tells his son not to fly too high or too low. If he goes too high, the feathers that he has managed to hold together using wax is going to melt. But the kid, of course, is a kid, and he goes too close to the sun, and then the wax melts, and then he falls down. Where does he fall? Well, according to Mitarai, he falls on Sicily. Actually, he didn't fall on Sicily. Daedalus landed on Sicily. So Daedalus landed on Sicily. So anyway, it's kind of fun to see a reference to Icarus, even though his father landed perfectly safely on Sicily. But we have now a statue of Icarus right there to remind us of that. It's quite stunning. There are many amazing pictures that you can take with this statue in the foreground. Yeah, I did run into this artist being exhibited in Venice when I was in Paris. There's a beautiful gallery, and his work is all over. So I immediately recognize, of course, his style. Um, so anyway, here we go. This is the sacred Via Sacra, the sacred way that you walk along the temples that are on the side. So you can just get off the way and then climb a little bit and then check out the temple and come back. So this is a little bit what we're going to do. So the temple of Hercules is there. Oh, that's Maria. This is from our trip in 2020, Temple of Zeus. Okay, so this is this famous temple that I showed you earlier, from which those Telemons, like one of them is right there lying down here. There is maybe one or two others here and there that's been more or less preserved, but actually I was also told that they were not genuine telemons that it was built. So this is how it looked. I just want to show you the scale of this colossal building. This is the Temple of Zeus, and the Temple of Concordia we just saw is compares to that. It's just one fourth of it practically. Do you see that? How much bigger this was? And this is the altar uh, of this temple. Anyway, it's just incredibly big. So something is kind of surprising. I think Robert brought this up one time as to what happened to all these stones. I mean, if this huge building completely toppled and collapsed, and it must be a huge pile of stones there that should be still visible. Well, what happens very often is that these buildings in ruin are used as a quarry, and those stones are used for other things. And in this case, it's going to be used for a jetty. I'm just going to show you here some remnants of Telemon. So when we are with our guides, perhaps we should ask for sure whether these are genuine or just made up there for show. Let's see, is this the one that I'm going to try to? Okay, so here I am getting out of this site, and I'm going to take you to this city, seaside port city. Mm, Empedocles. Empedocles is the name. So the jetty that you see here, all these stones that you see, all these cut stones are come from the Temple of Zeus. This is where they were used. Is that amazing? So this is what happens. At least it's being used still, but what a shame. Okay, so that will complete our visit to Agrigento. Temple of Athena. We're back to Syracuse, like real quick because I have only about 15 minutes. So we saw this. This is the Apollo. Okay, and now and this is the um, Temple of Athena. So do I get to? Oh, I think I can see something. Yeah. So the facade. is incredibly Baroque. Look at this. Okay, so this is very Baroque. There's nothing ancient Greek about this, all right? But there is so much of a surprise waiting for you on the sides and inside. So I'm gonna take you to the sides first and show you how this this former temple still its columns are still being used and appear along the side of this building, somehow still being shown. So of course they put those walls in between, uh, but it's of course this is how when it was converted into a church by by the Byzantines and then by the Normans. What you see this crenellation on the very top is dates from the Normans' time, 11th, 12th century. So is that kind of fun that there's all these remains from the from this Greek temple and somehow incorporated into this building that totally survived and still being used as a church. So this is how it looked. And like I told you, the orientation was facing the back of the church because that's where the east is. The Christian church, you enter from the west. The altar is on the east. The altar for the classical ones is on the east. Uh, so is on the west. So anyway, so and what was also interesting is that the pediment had this kind of a shield-looking object that reflected the rising sun. Again, this is oriented toward the east, and the visitors from the sea will see this shining object from a distance, and they will be incredibly intrigued by that because it will reflect the sun's rays right back at him. And this was something that many have written about. So this is how it looked originally. And then the interior is this. So my understanding is that, I mean, this is a little bit hard for me to believe, but the walls apparently are original from Greek times. I need to ask again our guide to be sure about that. They of course, later on, these carvings have happened, and then they maybe completed with some columns that may have maybe toppled or may not be there, but the whole point is create the main nave and then the side aisles, which is your typical Latin cross church. So that's these are this room, which is supposed to be the room of the deity, the cella, of course, didn't have these arches and these openings originally. So we'll have to figure out whether this was truly enclosed or not. And here we have our altar and Christian altar turned toward the east, and the entrance we're entering from the west. During uh, Greek times, it was the opposite. And then these columns are still being seen and dating from 480 to 470 BC, and they are right there, made out of drums, quite big drums. And of course, they have a very interesting technique of using pegs to make sure that they are all aligned on the same axis. So these are some of the terms for to indicate some of the parts of the column. The capital is actually made out of these two parts. All the columns are still so visible, and it's quite interesting to see this. So we'll be visiting this church for sure. And the ceiling is, of course, a wooden ceiling, nothing original. But my understanding that during Greek times, this was also a wooden ceiling that they will have. Okay, we'll finish with Taormina, and now this is what's left of the of a row of an originally Greek theater, but then was totally refurbished and used extensively by the Romans. Now the Greeks have this tendency of building their theaters against the side of a hill that already have a natural inclinations, and sometimes they carve the seats right inside, like they use the rock of the hill to build those risers, those seats. So whenever you see a theater that is not freestanding, that's not like one building just by itself, but against a hill, it's most likely originally built by the Greeks and then altered over time by Romans. So this is how it's looking in Turkey. When I had visited one of these first ancient theaters, I was told that the Greeks had understood acoustics so well that they had built a little angle on the bottom here. For example, this wall that you see will not be straight, will have an angle so that the voice will be projected back and then will remain within the building instead of just bouncing off and then going up. So they had come up with those kind of tricks so that even a whisper could be heard from the stage. Yeah, there was some inscription that were found, which dated the theater to, of course, Greek times, so to the third century BC. So the Greek skene, like it's like we say scene today, and then in Roman, then it becomes called skene fronts. So you've got this mm, kind of backdrop that's totally actually Roman. The Greeks did not have anything like this. The Greeks did not have a backdrop like this. There was nothing here except you will have some sort of a building that will almost like a container, and it will be actually a temporary building in which the actors will come in and out, changing their costumes inside and then coming out from this building. And on the side of this building here, it wouldn't be too tall. It will be just enough, like a container. I'm imagining that way. And then there will be perhaps a little decoration or some sort of a design that will go along the storyline of that they were performing about. But anyway, so that was how the Greeks did their theater. But then the Romans, I guess my thinking is that, they needed more entertainment. They were maybe a little bit more superficial than Greeks. So they started to build all of these backdrops and all of these niches and all of these columns and then statues that will decorate. I guess, if one of the plays was just super boring, they will have something to look at. Well, I mean, it's kind of silly. Even without the wall, you have this incredible view to look at. So I don't know why you would want to cover that. Look at the view that you will have sitting here. So of course, this theater over time has seen a lot of changes over time, and it became also even an arena, um, just like the Colosseum was an arena, where you had actually wild animals that will come, and then there would be gladiatorial games going on here. Of course, you would have a wall tall enough here so that those lions or tigers or exotic animals who are here wouldn't be able to jump and then attack the spectators. So this was completely transformed over time to fit those kind of new ways of entertainment that the Romans liked, and that was totally not Greek at all. So, of course, because to accommodate those kind of changes over time, the entrance to the theater change actually three times. In the origin, you will enter from the ground, but then after that, they started to expand the use of it, so the entrance becomes on the second floor of sort. But then after that, when they turned into an arena, it became quite dangerous. Then the entrance became further up. So this is how it looks, and in the distance in the back, yes, you are seeing the Etna volcano. It's a stunning place. And we will go visit this. And of course, during the time of the Romans, um, there were some other features, like for example, they had a canopy, a retractable awning um, that they had, uh, because it can get very sunny, obviously, in Sicily and uncomfortable. So they will have a very advanced rigging system to pull all these like sails when needed, and this is how mm, the scene, the backdrop looked during Roman times, completely covering the view. And giving more prominence to all the decorations and the statues that you will see in every single niche here. But then this is how it looked in 1825, thanks to this painting that is found actually at the Met Museum. It was in terrible shape, so you can now understand the restorations that's been applied to this um, theater. Look at what shape it's in. Of course, for the romantics, this looks awesome and very worthy of painting, as how the remains from the past civilizations just morph into nature, taking it over and become something also very interesting, appealing. But this is more like how it looked um, during Roman times. Today it's completely being used, and there for a while, I don't know if they're still doing it, but the Taormina Film Festival, at least the prizes were given here. It can take up to almost like 5,000 people, 4,000, 5,000 people can be accommodated in here. The other thing that's interesting is that through these openings, we just happen to see this building, which is a very, very fancy hotel. It's called the San Domenico Palace, the Four Season Hotel. And it's the site of perhaps you've watched it of the White Lotus, the number, the second season. I believe it's the second season, right? Um, anyway, we watched it. It was kind of fun. Um, and then Woody Allen also used this theater for one of his movies, and it's actually. Let me see if I can share this. I need to probably click share sound, video sharing. Let's see if it's gonna work. And then, oh, well, I didn't have it. I had the video of it, but turns out that I didn't have it. I changed my mind, I guess. Okay, that's completes my lecture. Can you believe that it's like almost 90 minutes? I kind of made it. I'm very proud of myself. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next week. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Setsuko.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Savan.
Thank you. It
Excellent.
was great.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
Siobhan.
Okay.
Nice job.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
See you
Tori, for
next week.
managing everything.
Oh, yes, we need her.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we did
You're
it.
welcome.
Here we go. Okay,
Good job, Dad.
Oh, thanks, babe. That means a lot coming from you.
You must be something, Mark.
I'm getting there, with my Egyptian art.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I'm going to the Met on Thursday, and there's an Egyptian show there. And guess what? I'm going to see it. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to learn plenty of things, and I'll tell you all about it.
Nice. You had a reference to fish, these fish plates that would hold a
Yes.
sauce.
Yes.
There's an, I believe there's an ancient sauce called garum,
Mm.
which
Amen.
was
Oh,
which
Gary.
was generated a plenty in coastal towns at this time, and it's like it's think of it as like an early Mediterranean soy sauce. It was a fermented fish sauce that would spend months and years fermenting. And
Ooh.
I've come across it on YouTube videos of people trying to produce it themselves. But I think that's what those plates would be mostly used for.
Yeah, they may have put it in the middle, so you take that fish, whether it's cooked or raw, and then you dip it in that little compartment in the
Again.
center.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. So yeah, any other comments? Yeah, Robert, you're here. You usually have things to say. Oh, look
I'm
at the
excited
cat.
to.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Kitty. Good.
Oh,
She enjoyed also.
She slept soundly through the whole lecture.
well, I can't blame her.
Mm.
My wife would have slept also.
No, 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 no.
She might have out of spite entirely.
So you say you're excited to see all
Oh,
this, Robert?
I'm totally excited to see the temples. I love being surrounded by just these colossal constructions. It's just gonna be incredible.
Incredible, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be very nice. We have to hope, of course, for good weather, but that's one of the few things we cannot control. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you have no other questions, I will see you next week. Yeah, okay?
Leave the meeting. You
Yes.
can click it.
Thank you,
All right.
Simone.
Oh, my
Thank you,
pleasure,
Tori. Thank you,
always.
Robert.
Hi, Pam.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Mom.
I guess.
Bye.
She's muted. Bye.